All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Simple Scrapper Live. My name is Jennifer Wilson, and I am your guide here at Simple Scrapper, a diverse community of women who are dedicated to being more intentional and purposeful in their hobby. We focus on helping you figure out what works best for you to help you create at the intersection of what fills you up and what fits your life. Each week, I come to you here on Simple Scrapper Live to talk about one specific aspect of scrapbooking. We delve into a lot of the topics that are kind of containers for our hobby, life things that help support us coming to the table and getting crafty. Because there's so many things that go on in the world that impact how we feel and what our motivation is to show up to create. Or not. Sometimes we just don't feel like it. So in today's very special episode, I really want to dig into some things that are going on in the world right now and try to connect that to how we're feeling as a community about scrapbooking and maybe even crafting and hobbies in general. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit nervous about this. I have a lot of notes and I want to keep this really concise for you guys and help you make it be really actionable. I also want it to be really open and honest. And I want to invite all of you that are watching live in the Crowdcast room to definitely submit questions and share comments in the chat. And if you are watching live on Facebook or YouTube, please jump over to Crowdcast and join our community as we delve into this specific topic. So the title is How to Create When You're on Empty. And I'm trying to shed some light on this feeling, this sensation that I'm feeling myself and that I am sensing among others, and I'm starting to have discussions with others about this, that things feel a little bit different this year. And it's more than just the ups and downs of life that happen to us individually. We've talked a lot over the years on how to cope when you have challenges in your life and how do you ride that wave to make sure that you are still celebrating your memories and getting what you need to personally out of your hobby. But I think what's happening is a little bit bigger than that. It's these large scale national and world events that are deeply impacting us and affecting our hearts and consequently impacting how we're showing up and behaving in the world. And part of that, of course, is just scrapbooking, but there's so much more of that. Things that we're doing a little bit differently that we may not even realize we're doing differently because of things going on in the world that are impacting us. All right, so before we dive in, the first thing that I want to say is that I am not a psychologist, I'm not a sociologist, I have no expertise in the subject, I'm just a human being just like you, and I'm sharing my personal opinions and perspectives and some of my own advice for you. And so, but if you are at all concerned that you may be experiencing something that's more severe, you're experiencing real depression or anxiety, I do want to encourage you to consult a medical professional because I'm definitely not one. So I just want to put that out there. But I will say that I do believe in what I'm saying, and I'm hopeful that we can kind of open the doors. That this is a giant kick open of some things that we're feeling that maybe we're uncomfortable to talk about because there's a lot of disagreement out there. There's a lot of divergence of opinions on whether or not things are going well or things are going down the toilet. And it's hard to be in a place where some people think that they're so right and some other people think that they're right. And what's the reality? It can't be both, but it is. It really is when we have so much polarization. So let's step back a bit, and I want to start with the fact that we all thought that 2016 was not so great. I remember New Year's Eve going from 2016 to 2017. Everybody was like, good riddance 2016, you sucked. I can't wait for 2017. This is going to be the year and it's going to be better. And then 2017 came and it was like, oh shoot, maybe this is what things are like now. Maybe this sense of negativity that we had in 2016, maybe that was gonna continue. So here's some of the facts we know, is that here in the US, as well as overseas, opinions are polarized more than ever. People are not compromising. They're not trying to see the other side. They're saying, I'm right and you're wrong. And then the opposite side is saying, I'm right and you're wrong. There's less coming together to try to find common ground. There's this huge divergence. And then on top of that actual fact, we have news that really kind of underscores this disparity in beliefs. And it oftentimes tries to sensationalize it and to get you to watch, because that's what they do. It's business, it's media. They're trying to get you to watch. And so they're going to say, I'm right and they're wrong. And you see that everywhere. I'm trying to be really delicate here. And then, so we have this political situation that has bled over into kind of almost our daily lives, because this impacts our friendships and our family relationships. You know, I've heard a lot of different things about how people have changed their Facebook behaviors because of disagreements, and it weighs on them when someone they care about so much thinks so differently. And how do you cope with that? And so we were already dealing with that throughout this year. And then we have Hurricane Harvey. And I don't want to say that this was the biggest tragedy of the year, because there are some things that have happened around the world that are on an equal and as well as bigger scale. But of course, that shifted the attention here in the US. In a certain degree, we've had a bit of a reprieve from the political turmoil. But now we have this new reason that our hearts are heavy. And how do we show up for this, and how do we continue to be creative when it makes us question, what do we really believe and what's important to us, and how do I want to spend my time when there's so many people out there that are suffering for one reason or another? All right, so that's kind of laying the groundwork for what I see as the facts of right now. And here's how that's impacted me in 2017. To be honest, this has been my least productive year since I started scrapbooking. And I have never been the most prolific scrapbooker, but I feel like I've been really consistent. This year has been the worst. And I definitely feel like it's because of this circumstance that we're facing right now. And as well as some of the behaviors that I've chosen as a response to that. So when we have this situation, it's been harder for me to maintain a foundation of wellness. Now, I actually have been exercising more and eating healthier, but some of just those basic things that I felt like I had made huge progress on last year, like getting a lot of sleep, have slid this year. And I think it's part of this situation. And I also want to be honest and say that I've been more likely to order a beer at a restaurant and have a beer after dinner. And I'm not a huge drinker. I'm just a casual, everyday social drinker. By everyday, I mean regular, not normal, not that I drink every day. But I'm just trying to observe that I have been more likely to order a drink this year than I have in the past. And a lot of this boils down to me to like this excess escapism, that I've noticed that I have these behaviors that are different from the past, that, you know, sure, there's things that we do to procrastinate and waste time, but I feel like that's gotten worse for me. And for me, that's manifested in watching a huge amount of YouTube videos. And I've never been a big YouTube person before, and now I understand why kind of some of the younger set are totally obsessed with it. It's really kind of addictive. But I've watched more YouTube videos this year than the entire previous decade combined. And that's been my brand of escapism. Yours might be something else. I've heard, you know, Real Housewives and other Bravo shows. I've heard actually even healthy coping behaviors, a lot more exercise, a lot more kind of hyper focus on wellness. And for me, it's been this toggle between I'm either like hyper connected, hyper checked into what's going on in the world, or I'm like checked out, like I can't handle it anymore. And the bounce back and forth is a kind of emotional roller coaster, because when I'm checked in, I'm not feeling so hot. And when I'm checked out, I have this like kind of false sense of security and safety. So that's how it is for me. As a business owner, I've also noticed that things have just been kind of weird. Consumer behavior is different than what we had come to expect as a community of business owners. At first, I thought that the public in general, so these are kind of my observations of others, is that you're watching more news, that you're watching news instead of scrapbooking. And so I started asking around, and the answer is no, you're not. You're actually watching less news. But what you are doing is you're doing more of those escapist things. And sometimes those are healthy coping behaviors where you're going on walks and really trying to get more in tune with yourself because you know this is bringing you down. But it's also a lot of unhealthy behaviors. It's being lazy or eating more salty foods, not taking care of yourself as you're kind of checking out from all the negativity. And so has that resulted in less scrapbooking? For some, I think that's definitely the case. I'm also seeing kind of more shifts in focus this year than ever before, almost to the point of a non-focus, that you're feeling unsettled, so you're not really sure how you want to create. So maybe you're dabbling a little bit, trying new things more than you had in the past. So it feels like your path is winding and not directional, I guess. So here's why I think some of this is happening to us. We have this polarization of opinion, and that's created this tension in our families and relationships. We have the nonstop breaking news, which has kind of even heightened the sense of anxiety. And I know that I was even holding my breath with each phone notification and then sighing with relief when it was just a dead celebrity. You know, the same thing that we were lamenting so much about in 2016, that's like, oh, that's no big deal now, when it's still very sad. Adding on to that, fears of wars and natural disasters, they kind of add to whatever you're already dealing with amongst this new stuff, as well as your own junk, because we all have our own junk that happens in our lives that impacts how we feel. And then, so take all of these things on top of our already kind of taxed nervous system that comes from having this hyper connection to our devices, the constant pings and notifications. Recently, I've been hearing these stats that the average person is checking their phone every 7 minutes. And I'm probably totally guilty of that. I haven't timed it, but I know that I'm constantly checking it and kind of waiting for that stimulation from it, for better or worse. So it's no wonder that we're feeling so burnt out. So in a way that's different from ever before. It's not like we're feeling burnt out because we're hustling so much or we're working so hard or we've really invested all of our energy. We're feeling burnt out because of this giant emotional black hole that the world has kind of brought to us, but we've not been prepared to respond to with our own behaviors. And so if you've been feeling even just a smidge of this, I want you to know that this is real and that there's others like you that are feeling the same things. And for everyone, it's going to be a little bit different. But I just really wanted to kind of make this public, to know that it's okay to talk about how you're feeling right now, and to know that amidst all of the things we don't agree on, I think the one thing we can agree on is that this is different and it doesn't feel good. But amidst all that, I do believe there is hope, and that even by just the simply talking openly about it, that takes the first steps towards helping us kind of making changes in how we feel, making changes in our behaviors, so we can start changing course and really get in tune with ourselves so that we can cope as more bad stuff, to genericize it, kind of comes on us in the future. That we weren't prepared to cope with this degree of heavy, and but we can be moving forward. So the first thing I want to do is offer some kind of baseline life suggestions. And maybe you have some additional suggestions both for this and kind of the next phase where I talk about kind of some creative practices. And these are, to me, this is just a starting point. These are some of the simplest first steps, the low-hanging fruit, that you can tackle. So 1, reduce or eliminate your notifications. I had a good, long, hard talk with my phone, and I reduced almost every single notification so that I was picking up my phone when I wanted to, not when my phone was buzzing or beeping at me. And I've not found that I've missed any news that was important. I will eventually hear about it anyway. And I found that even the non-news notifications, whether it was the weather or storage on my phone, there were so many things that were constantly buzzing and taking my attention away from what I was doing that it was just becoming too much of a distraction. And the same goes if you have notifications that happen on your computer as well. That's a good kind of first step to just reduce this heightened sense of anxiety, so you're not feeling like you're constantly being pulled in many directions. Number two is I want to suggest, and I hope you also share this suggestion with others, that we regularly choose alternate news sources so that you can gain a variety of perspectives. Because if one news source is saying, oh my gosh, this thing is so horrible, and another news source is saying, oh my gosh, this thing is so awesome, or not horrible at all, the reality probably is somewhere in the middle. And I think if we all diversify some of our news sources, we can feel less of that sensationalism of that news to try to get closer to what's the truth, and to try to improve our dialogue with others who may not agree on that issue. And I think that's just a healthy behavior that we can all learn from so that we can start coming back together to make compromises and build bridges where it feels like they're not any anymore. And then I also want you to think about how you're spending your time now versus a year or two ago. I want you to just start becoming aware of choices that you're making that are maybe escapist or unhealthy coping behaviors, or maybe even healthy coping behaviors that may be taken to excess. And it's not really even about changing it at this point. It's about just becoming aware of what you're doing and maybe why, and what has shifted for you and how that is manifesting in your life. Because that awareness is a huge first step towards making a change. But you can't make any changes until you really get grounded in what's real. So to me, those three things, those are a good place to start, to kind of shine a light on this problem and to start taking steps out of this darkness that we're experiencing. And I think if we all work on this together, we can start coming together to have honest conversations about this, about our feelings and about the situation, and focus on all that's good and wonderful and celebration of our gratitude. And I think that's where it comes back to creativity for me, is that fundamentally scrapbooking is a gratitude practice. I think that's one thing, no matter if you are very legacy focused or you're very creative focused, I think that's where it comes together for everyone, is it's a way of celebrating our lives and the ups and downs and how we are so lucky to be human and get to show up to spend time with our friends and family and to do good in the world. So to close out here, I have 5 different ideas for helping you to kind of ease back into your creative practice if you felt a little disconnected from it. And I'll also say that if you have felt disconnected, that even just starting to have these conversations, whether that's with your friends and family or other scrapbookers like here at Simple Scrapper, I think that's a really foundational step, is to be not just doing this alone, but doing this in a community of people who are going through the same thing. And maybe as well, in addition to these 5 ideas, you might have some additional ideas for me. So I actually have a step 0 here, and I want you to first say that one of the solutions is not to buy more stuff. Of course, if you need something, that's different, but I think there tends to be this gut reaction that I need to buy something new in order to feel better about myself or my hobby, and that's generally not the answer. The answer is to dig in, to kind of get your fingers dirty, whether that's on your computer or in real life, and to make something, because that's when you really remember what this hobby does for you and how it fills your life. Okay, so step 1 is to find a simple single-page challenge to play along with. So we have some at Simple Scrapper inside our membership community, but you can find them all over the online community of memory keepers. And it's just this simple prompt to say, do these things with these parameters and then share your page. They can be done often even as little as 30 minutes. But it's a simple starting point where somebody else is telling you what to do. You don't have to think about what you need to do next or what your priorities are. You just need to show up and make something just for the pure joy of it. And to me, that's the easiest way to jump right in. Next, we have kind of something that's more project-oriented, is that if you felt that you're not making progress, think about, is there a project that you can pick up that's maybe really close to being done? Whether that's a layout that just needs journaling, or it's a larger album that just needs 2 pages, to pick up that project that'd be really simple to finish and to focus on getting it done. Because you're gonna feel so awesome when that's done. You're gonna feel already ready to do what's next. Your brain will be churning and you'll already know what's going to be next for you to create when you finish something that's tangible like that. Okay, idea number 3 is to focus on how stories fit into your hobby. And one of my favorite ways to do that is to browse through an album and to really think about, what are the gaps? What are some stories that I could tell that maybe I've actually left a page for, or that I'm sensing there's a need for, a new voice, a different perspective, a milestone that wasn't captured, and to fill in that gap in that album. Because this is not the time to start a big new project. You don't have that momentum yet. But what you do have is you have this desire to reconnect. And if you can fill in a gap in an album, that becomes so satisfying, because that's one more story that you've told that adds to this body of work that you've already created. And it helps you reconnect with all that work that you've done in the past and what kind of joy that brought to your life. Okay, the next one is organization. And I didn't want to start there because there's this tendency to jump right into organization when we feel unsettled. And if you've already completed these other tasks, or maybe none of them weren't quite right for you, I think working on your photo library is a really, really strong way to get reconnected to your memories. And that's because these are your stories. This is the foundation of your scrapbooking. And I know that when I browse my photo library, I get more inspired than ever to create. And of course, we have our Photo Crush Challenge, which is a structure and a framework for you to work on your photo organization. And so that's another way to kind of dive back in and reconnect with your memory keeping practice. And then finally, and this is something that you could do at the beginning or the end, I want to encourage you to make a creative date with yourself. Write it on your calendar, and then don't stand yourself up. Too often we can set aside time and then blow it off because we're not feeling energized, we don't know where to start. But to set that date and then show up to it, even prepare for it if you can, and use that time well. Even if it's just, fussing around with some of your supplies and you're not even sure what you're gonna do, but just to show up and start playing. And I know that when I start touching things, that's when the connections start happening with my brain. But as long as I'm kind of hands off, I stay in this place of disconnection. But touching the supplies really helps me. So those are just some of the ideas. Hopefully you guys have some more as well. I'd love if you shared those in the comments. And I just want you to know that it just takes one step. I don't need you to do all these things. I want you to pick one. I want you to pick one place to start moving forward again. And I think as you do that, that will kind of give you the permission to keep creating and to know it's going to be okay. No matter what, it's going to be okay. Yes, things are going to be a little bit different. It's pretty clear that we've kind of diverged and we're on a new path. And things might never feel exactly the same again. But that doesn't mean we don't have the capacity to cope and to find ways to fill our wells even more and to become more grounded, more connected, and more kind of well people in the world. And when we do that, that's what gives us the capacity to go out there and continue to change things and to start mending those fences and making the world that we want to see. So one final note is that before we jump into the questions, is if any of this resonated with you and you'd like more support, I do want to mention that for a limited time through September 17th, new members are going to get a free 12-week video series. And I recorded this last fall. It's called Nourish, and it's a 12-episode video series that connects some of the fundamentals of self-care, mind, body, spirit, and heart with your creative process and how you can set up your life to feel creative and feel more nourished and recharged. And I think that's what people are needing right now. And so I wanted to make the opportunity to bring more people into our membership community, which is just this amazing group of women who are so supportive of each other. And I know we have many watching here today as well. So you can find more about that if you're in Crowdcast, click the green Become a Member button, or at go.simplescrapper.com/join. I'm going to check to see if we have any questions here. We have no questions today at this point. I'm going to check out the comments here. Nicole says she loves step 5 because she's been prepping for a small project since last week and have not had time to get to it. That's the perfect example. Maybe you have all things kind of set up. I know that I have everything gathered here from a layout from one of our recent member crops. And once you set that time on the calendar, you are more likely to follow through if you pencil it in and actually show up to it. Treat it like you would a dentist appointment or any other meeting in your life. Danielle has another great suggestion, that instead of posting a picture on Instagram or Pinterest, to go ahead and print it out and use it for a layout. And I think you can actually do both. I know we've become almost trained to get that, the social feedback from sharing our pictures online. But what if you always coupled that with printing the photo and creating that layout so that you can get the feedback from your family as well, from that memory being documented? Nicole asked, will this video be available to share with folks who are not on live? Yes, it will. And I'm actually anticipating doing kind of an encore presentation next week. I know there's a lot of folks who kind of just coming off the holiday weekend who maybe were not able to attend live. So I'll be having a separate registration for another presentation at an evening time so that we can connect with more people, because I think this is a really, really important topic, and I want to keep the conversation going. All right, here. Oh, that's an interesting point, Danielle. She says that you also give other people more free time because they have to look at fewer pictures. And so what I think she's saying is that by not sharing everything on social media, but then instead taking it to Scrapbook, you're actually helping others become less kind of sucked in, interested in Facebook, because you're not giving them more content to consume. So Sarah says she's bummed she forgot to tune in till just now. As soon as this presentation is over, you can use the exact same link to watch the replay. So if you're just tuning in now, or maybe or missed the beginning, you'll be able to watch the whole entire thing right afterwards via the same link. All right. All right. Okay, guys. We are edging in on 30 minutes here. Oh, Ellen says, remember that social media is designed to literally be addictive, which is why we find ourselves on it for so long. And I think that's very true. I will admit that scrolling Facebook has become one of my kind of escapist behaviors as well. And it's really interesting to, let's see, how do I say this? Over time, I've experimented with turning off my feed or previously using the Groups app on my phone. But to a certain degree, I felt disconnected from my own friendships when I did that. I felt like I wasn't able to see what's going on in the world because everyone else is so reliant on Facebook for sharing that they had a baby or got married, and how would I know if I didn't check in? So there's certainly this catch-22 of the inherent need to actually be on Facebook to keep up with what's going on, as well as the fact that we end up scrolling and then just getting advertisements and getting sucked into articles and quizzes and all the things that actually aren't a good use of our time. All right. Oh, Danielle just said, she said, my lovely husband sent me upstairs to watch this broadcast. So you need to find someone who will hold you to your appointment with yourself. Many of you know that I have a weekly accountability partner, and she's someone that we connect with once a week to share our wins and losses and set course corrections and new goals for the week. And having someone to hold you accountable to the things that are important. I also have a business mastermind that kind of is just the same thing. That's been so important for me to stay connected with what's important to me. All right, I am sensing here that you guys are identifying with some of these thoughts, and whether or not you felt, totally on empty, or you're just feeling this heightened sense of anxiety and this tension that's created unease and has made you more wary of sharing yourself with others, and maybe more hesitant to create because you're just not sure how to express yourself right now. I want to remind everyone that we're all in this together. We only get this one precious life, and it is my hope that by being more open and honest with this dialogue that we can start moving forward and create the future that we really want. I thank you guys so much for watching today. Again, my name is Jennifer Wilson, and I am your guide here at Simple Scrapper. I look forward to connecting with you again soon.